Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today I wanted to talk about some of the changes that are happening on the test server, specifically the ones that are impacting the fighters and their nose guns. Now, before I get into this, I want to come out and make it very clear that these are things that are happening on the test server. When I posted my last one about base shields, it got a lot of flack from people saying that basically the message was you're an idiot for taking this for what it is. And the reason I talk about things on the test server is because these are things that people and developers are thinking about implementing in the game. That's why they're on the server. So it's important to stay informed about what's actually happening so you can decide for yourself if this is a good change or a bad change. Now, that being said, there was a note in the updates that said still some things in progress, but here's what's made it to test so far. So take that for what it's worth, and we'll actually see where this goes from here. If you're bored with just looking at numbers, I'll drop some video in the lower corner for you so you can at least look at that. But just know this is going to be a little bit numerical heavy. Alright, so when we're talking about these changes, we need to keep in mind that the only changes that have taken place so far are for the nose guns. Now, on the stock nose gun, that's going to be the M18 Needler for the Mosquito, the M20 Mustang for the Reaver, and the Sauron laser cannon for the Scythe. The other change is with the rotary nose gun. So again, the M18 rotary, the Vortec rotary, and the Hailstorm turbo. Those are going to be the only ones that you're actually going to see impacted. The faction-specific ones haven't had changes yet. In addition, the flight mechanics, speed, hover, all of those types of things aren't seeing changes. It's specifically about the nose guns. So we'll start with the stock. And you can see here that the fire rates have changed a little bit. Now, the lower number here is better in fire rate. It's essentially talking about time between shots. For the Mosquito, it's moving from 80 to 75. The Sauron laser cannon's moving from 85 to 82. So about a 5% change on average, bringing them closer in line to what you're seeing out of the Mustangs on the Reaver's primary nose gun. So an improvement for 2. Reaver's still the best, but the other 2 are starting to catch up just a little bit. Magazine size, here's where we're seeing some changes, big ones for the Mosquito. Mosquito's going from 50 to 75, which is a 50% increase. Now, the logic behind this is that they're supposed to be the high rate of fire, sustained fire faction, and that's really going to show here in the ability to keep more rounds going downrange. Reaver sees a little bit of an increase, 10%, moving it up to 55, and then the Sauron laser cannon moves up about 20% to 60. So the other 2 factions are getting significant increases, while the Reaver's still getting a little bit of one, but I think it's defining that role for the Mosquito a little bit more. Ammo capacity, Reaver is seeing a 10% increase. Sauron laser cannon a 20% increase. The Mosquito is, again, where the big change is coming, moving from 600 ammo cap to 900 ammo cap. So if you want to be out there and spam as many rounds downrange, Mosquito would be your vehicle of choice. Now, with the damage, here's where things are kind of a little bit interesting. We're seeing a big increase on the Mosquito's stock nose gun. It's going from 300 to 375 at max damage. That's a 25% increase, which is really significant. The Scythe is getting a 15% increase, which is also notable, moving from 325 to 375. Now, the Reaver is still getting a little bit of a bump. It's only 5%, but it's still quite a bit above where the other 2 factions are. So it's not getting left behind, but it is kind of taking a little bit of that prowess away from it. The minimum damage, I didn't have previous numbers, so I can't talk about the change. You can see that in order, it's going to go the Mosquito, the Scythe, and the Reaver on top. The minimum damage is where the Reaver really seems to shine a little bit more, because this is significantly higher than some of the other ones. And then the last 4 categories that are getting changes. The range, the Reaver maintains its max damage 25 meters past and 25 meters past the other 2 factions, and again, it retains its medium damage, and it doesn't get to its minimum damage until 25 meters further than the other factions as well. So an interesting change to note there. It still retains that ability, but it's less than it was before. Now, with the reload speed, nothing's really changing for the Mosquito or the Reaver. They're both staying at 2.5 seconds. The laser cannon is where we're actually seeing the biggest improvement of 20 seconds going down to 2 seconds. I don't know if this is just because batteries are easier to change than bullets, but there you go. And falling in line with that, the projectile speed over here is changing significantly as well. staying the same for the Mosquito and the Reaver, but the Scythe is getting a 1/3 increase, going from 600 meters per second up to 800 meters per second. Again, this is going to make it the best in class as far as projectile speed, which I guess makes sense because lasers are supposed to go around the speed of light. And then the last one here, Cone of Fire. Again, no changes to the Mosquito or Reaver. The Sauron laser cannon is going to drop down about 25% to bring it in line with the others. So, what does this actually mean for all three of these, and how do these all fare now that these changes are taking place? Well, I kind of compiled all of these into a overall sheet here, and you can see when I put it down just as best, worst, and middle, it doesn't really give you a whole lot of value. I mean, you can see the Sauron and the Scythe seem to really come out and shine, mainly just because it's not worst in any category. But it makes a little more sense when you look at the graphic on the right, where we actually break it down and I assign a number value to each. Lower is better here because best equals 1 and worst equals 3. Well, the Mosquitoes M18 and the Scythe Sauron both end up scoring a 15 overall, while the Reaver ends up scoring a 17 overall. So in this specific set of changes, it appears that the Reaver is seeing in most of these categories, the Reaver is kind of left behind. That being said, when you have the weapon that actually does the most damage, you need to expect to have some of these other categories adjusted. So it's not significantly lower than the others. You can see they're all within just a couple points of each other. But it is something just to take note of and prepare for if this change actually does come to fruition. Alright, so for you dogfighters out there, let's go ahead and move into the rotary nosegun variants and the changes that are being proposed in the test server. Again, we're going to start out with fire rates. You can see each of these saw an increase, and remember, the lower numbers are actually better. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the M18 rotary on the Mosquito is going to have the fastest fire rate out there at a 60. The Hailstorm Turbo at 70 and the Vortec at 80. Basically what this is doing is it's highlighting that Mosquito's role of being the fastest firing, extended fire type of nose gun out there. So while it saw the most significant change, what it actually did though is it still kept it as the best in class for fire rate. For magazine size, we saw several different changes as well. The Mosquito's is staying the same at 50, so no change there. The Vortec saw the biggest hit, moving its magazine size from 35 to 25, which is about a 28% change. Now, with these, you can always sort into higher mag sizes. Just know that these are going to be, dropping for you, including when you sort it up. And then the Hailstorm Turbo went from 40 to 35, so only a 12% change. So when you combine fire rate and magazine size, you can kind of get what's going to be your sustained fire ability. So the Reaver is going to have the slowest firing nose gun. It's going to do more damage, like we'll talk about in just a second, but it's going to have a smaller magazine size. So you can kind of see how those relate to each other and how each three of these balance each other out. Now, with the maximum damage, this is where the Reaver is going to continue to shine. It was already way higher than some of the others, and what's actually going to be happening is it's going to still jump up even higher to 500. Now, this is max damage, so when you're up close to your target, it got a 28% increase. Now, the Mosquito got a 33% increase, which is higher than the Reaver, but when you actually look at where it landed, it's still way below where the Vortec rotary is. The Scythe, for example, jumped from 308 to 360, giving it a 17% jump, which puts it right in the middle of the two, even though the Reaver still really shines here. Minimum damage follows the same logic. I didn't have previous data on this. The Mosquito 270, Hailstorm Turbo 300, Reaver 425. So you could really see how the Reaver is balanced out by some of the fire rate and mag size, but really shines with the actual damage piece. High accuracy is important. Moving over to range, again, just like the stock nose guns, the Reaver maintains its maximum damage and prevents minimum damage for longer distances, about 25 meters further than where you're actually looking at the other two factions. Reload speed, we saw some changes. The reload speed for the Mozzie went from 1.5 to 2.25, which is a 50% increase. I guess it takes longer to reload all of those rounds. The Vortec Rotary, 1.5 to 2, saw a 33% increase. And again, the Scythe is the lowest in this category, 1.5 to 1.75, which is only a 17% increase. Projectile speed, again, just like the stock nose guns, the Reaver and the Mosquito remain unchanged. However, the Hailstorm Turbo actually got a significant issue here, improvement here, where it went from 550 to 700, again, making it the fastest projectile speed because of, well, lasers, with a 27% increase. And the last one here, ammo capacity. The Mosquito is staying 500, so no change there. Again, that goes back to the sustained fire. Vortec Rotary, 350 to 250. That's almost a 30% decrease in the overall ammo capacity. Now, you can obviously sort that up, but I guess it's preventing the most powerful weapon out there from having near unlimited ammo. And then the Hailstorm Turbo, the Scythe, went from 400 down to 350, so it's a 12% reduction. So, just like the stock guns, let's kind of lay it out. Again, on the left, you can kind of see best, worst, and middle. You can just kind of see, again, looking at the Hailstorm, you would think it would probably be coming out on top just because it's got mid and best written all over it, and it actually does. The Hailstorm, when you look at the numerical value, 1 being best, 3 being worst, so low is good, the Hailstorm actually comes out and shines here. The Vortec and the M18 Rotary balance each other out pretty well. The Scythe is going to benefit from a pretty big improvement if this actually comes to fruition. Again, we're not talking huge gaps in here, so 16 to 14, it's pretty minimal, but that's where we are standing right now in the test server. Now, with these sets of changes, we're specifically just talking about the weapon. So how does this mean these vehicles are going to perform actually when you compare other things, like their flight mechanics and their abilities? Well, you may look at this and say, well, the Reaver got the shaft in both categories. Well, kind of. And if you're just looking at those numbers, yes. Technically, they didn't see the improvements that the other two factions did. However, keep in mind, you still have the most powerful weapon out there. Now, you may not be able to sustain that power as long or be able to stay out without reloading as long, or you may not have seen some of the other improvements. But having the most powerful weapon is still a huge advantage, and it's something that shouldn't really be taken lightly. Now, if you want to compare that to, say, well, the Mozzie is, super fast and it's agile, and then you're giving it an improvement in its stock nose gun, while the Reaver is a flying brick, as a lot of people like to say. I mean, you can make an argument for that if you want to, but ultimately, keep in mind two things. The Reaver's not that far behind the other two when we're talking about maneuverability and those benefits. It's a big target to hit, that's for sure. There's no doubting that. But having that weapon that'll actually deal out a lot of damage really counteracts a lot of those beefs. So I'm going to try and play on the test server and see how these all feel. Granted, it's near impossible to find a lot of good fights to really test it out because nobody plays the test server, which is why I'm going to be dropping another link in the description. So please download this and test it out. The only way we know if these are going to work is if the players test on the server, why it's called the player test server, and give that feedback back to the developers. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Just look at the numbers and give me your hunch, but also make sure you get in there and actually test it out. So that's it for now. I'll be talking to you guys later. Take care. Youngblood out.